Welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're going to be working on a DIY project here in the kitchen. I'm going to be redoing my kitchen island again. This is like, the sixth time I've redone this kitchen island, but for good reason. This time, this is once again just another DIY, a quick, simple fix, but if you've been watching, then you know I have been complaining about these epoxy countertops for months and months. I did a project with my husband. I actually did a stucco live edge countertop, which I love it, but we still ended up using epoxy. And epoxy stains so easily. It is not durable like everybody says. It scratches really easy. It never looks clean. You can never get the fingerprints off of it. It just always looks dirty. So it's so bad. I don't recommend ever using epoxy in your kitchen. I feel like maybe if you're someone who doesn't use your kitchen as often, maybe it would work. But for us, family of 4 with 2 young kids, man, these countertops are just not holding up. So we're gonna fix this today. All right, so here's what they are looking like. Now, please know this is months and months of staining. I just haven't gotten around to painting them. I had to find a good day where I had the time to actually paint it, let it dry, and seal it. But yeah, as you can see, they just look disgusting. There's no other way to put it. I mean, they're gross. I don't even know what happened here. This is a very large stain. I never have figured out what stained it. It could have been coffee. I don't know. You can see they're pretty shiny, but from certain angles, I don't know. They just never look clean. Oh, this right here. Boom. Look at this. Look how dirty they look. It's awful. And I just wiped them down. They just smear. I don't know. I've tried Windex. I've tried Dawn and water. Nothing works to get them clean, let alone to get the stains up. I've tried every hack that you can think of. Y'all have even given me ideas. All this is just, it's like soaked into the epoxy. It's crazy. So we're going to fix it today. Before I begin, I'm going to take a sanding block and start sanding down some of the areas where there was stuff stuck onto the countertop. So there was a couple spots where something had spilt and it almost absorbed into the epoxy and was really, really hard to get off. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm really putting some strength behind the sanding block to get these spots up. I don't know what exactly it was, but particularly over here, you can see I'm using my fingernail and scrubbing. I don't know, just little spots sometimes just would not ever come up whenever you wiped it clean. So I literally had to go through and sand it. And then I decided to do a wet sand where you take the sanding block and you wet the counter and you just kind of rough up the surface before I started painting. Now, before you go out and you start painting your countertops, please do your own research. There is always a risk involved. Anytime you do a DIY like this, it could either turn out really good or really bad really quick. So just make sure that you know that. Also, when it comes to doing DIY projects, everything always looks worse before it looks better. So you got to give it a little bit of time, you know what I mean, before you start judging. I have learned this time and time again. Every single time I do a project, I start it and I'm like, oh, I just messed up. But it always ends up turning out in the end. You just got to give it some time. The first thing I'm going to do is start off with Waverly chalk paint. The reason why I wanted to use chalk paint is just kind of almost as a primer, because I know chalk paint adheres to most surfaces really well. And so since the epoxy was a very glossy finish, I wanted to put a good base down that I knew would adhere well. So that's why I chose to use the chalk paint first. And it worked great. So far so good. Like I said, it was the Waverly chalk paint in the color Mineral. Now this was actually going to be my base color. However, I ran out of paint. I only bought the small container of the paint and it wasn't enough. So I ended up having to go over this using some paint I had on hand so I could get a solid color. But looking back now, I could have gotten away with just using these 2 coats because when I started to add the colors to the top for the marble, there were so many layers of paint added that it hid the bottom fine. So it would have been totally fine to just leave these 2 coats. So if you are attempting to do a DIY countertop, just know that you don't have to do as many layers of paint as I did. And there was a lot of drying time in between this. I feel like this took up a lot more time than I expected. Now, something else. If you've never done a DIY marble, you can get on YouTube and search DIY marble countertops, DIY countertops in general, and you can see so many creators who have done so many different types of marble or granite, and it's really fun to watch because you get to learn so many different techniques.
But at the end of the day, everybody's technique is going to be a little different. And I truly believe that sometimes you just got to jump in and just learn along the way. And speaking of learning along the way, can y'all believe that after I got both of these coats done and let it dry, I ended up painting the countertops black? Can you believe that? Well, believe it, because I sure did. Let me insert some footage of me making huge mistakes. Now you may be wondering, well, why the heck did you paint them black? Well, it was because at the time, I was like, oh, maybe I need to have a darker base. So I painted the entire countertop black, tried to do like a DIY like stone marble look, and it looked awful. So back to the drawing board I went, and then I painted them back to being light again.
All right, so I got 2 coats of that Waverly chalk paint on here. Now, I am convinced, truly convinced, that there is something wrong with the epoxy that I used originally. Maybe it didn't cure properly or mix right. Although we follow directions to a T, it can happen. Stuff can happen. We have a lot of humidity here in Florida, and at the time that we did do our epoxy countertops, it was a struggle that day. I remember specifically it kept bubbling and I kept having to use my heat gun, and it was just a nightmare. So that could be what's going on, and that's why it's staining so easy, is because it's porous, so it's just soaking in anything that hits that countertop like paint. Because look, what you can't see from that angle, but right here you can see like a dark spot kind of popping up where that big orange stain was. It's starting to like come up again, like as if it's soaking in this paint. So we'll see. I'm gonna let it dry for about an hour, and then I'll do a 3rd coat and go from there. If the 3rd coat does not cover, at that point, I feel like, we might just need to ditch the whole entire island and redo it. But if the 3rd coat covers well enough to where I can do some type of design on top, I'm just gonna move forward. I'll do the design in steel with polycrilic, by the way. So we'll see. I'm just, we're winging it, hoping for the best.
Sir, excuse me. Mom, excuse me. Where you going, Camille? It's fine, baby. So at this point now, I'm going in with the color Pebble by Beyond Paint. The reason why I'm now doing this layer was because at the beginning of the video, I talked about wanting to have a solid base, and I felt like the mineral chalk paint wasn't, you could see a little bit of color coming through, especially since I had just painted it black. And I was doing like a DIY black stone countertop that didn't turn out. The reason why, it didn't look bad. I'll show you guys a picture. But it just was a lot more gray than what I want. I definitely am into more of the warm tones. I didn't want gray. So that is why I went back to the drawing board and pretty much started over. Now, speaking of starting over, there was actually quite a few mistakes I made, a couple different techniques I tried that I saw online, and they just didn't work for me, but I'm still going to include them in the video just so that way, in case they work better for you, you can try them. If not, I just want to show you that when you're working on projects, if something does happen and it doesn't turn out as you expected, don't stress it, girl. Just repaint it and just start over. It's not the end of the world. It's just paint. And I think so many times, like, we get discouraged, like, if something doesn't go right the first time. I'm the queen of getting discouraged, trust me. I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is horrible, what did I do? And at one point, I even told my husband, I was like, oh boy, at this point, I think we just need to, like, tear out the whole island and just start over, which eventually we do plan to do that, regardless. That's why to be honest, it's probably why I wasn't as stressed about this project, because I know eventually we are going to make the kitchen island bigger. Right now, we have a lot of other projects going on that are top priority. So this is the first mistake here after getting that Beyond Paint. As you can see in the background, it's really not even dry, and I decided to go ahead and start with the white veining. I used one of those little medicine syringes, and this was not it. I realized, oh gosh, I went too heavy with the paint. It's kind of like a glob, and I didn't think it was going to dry flat, so I was like, this is never going to work, and I ended up having to actually like rub this. It's ridiculous, I know. I don't even know if I want to share this. I ended up taking a rag, like a wet old rag, and I wiped all this paint away and then painted back over it with that Beyond Paint to have a fresh start again. So this is just living proof that we're all just winging it. We don't know what the heck we're doing. We're just doing our best. Now, I did blow dry it, and I thought that would work, right? So that was when I realized, and I added water. Oh my gosh. So I added water. I started to blow dry, like with my blow dryer, to see if I could like move the paint around to flatten it. And I think originally what happened was that I just went in too heavy, and I realized that it was easier and better for me just to stipple it in. So this is that wet rag I was telling you about where I rubbed this paint in, and then I'm going to paint over it. Now, I'll save you from the boring parts of me repainting the countertop again, but just know I went back to a solid base after rubbing this in and kind of smoothing out this paint. And then it's funny when I watch this back because I'm thinking to myself, what the heck are you doing, girl? What are you doing? But it's fine. It all came together. It looks fine. But then I started to realize that sponging on the veining was the way to go. So what I did was I took a puppy pad. We have a whole box left over from Knox when he was a puppy. Well, he's still a puppy, but he doesn't use the puppy pads. And I balled the puppy pad up and I used the smooth side of it to sponge on the paint. And it just worked really well. I don't know what it was. I just couldn't find anything else in the house that had that smooth like texture. So I sponged on all the veining and that was, okay, that looks fine. It looks weird right now. Just trust the process. You got to obviously add layers and layers to get this look. So it's going to look bad before it looks better. Trust me. And then I started going in with the veining, but I'm not leaving heavy veins. I do blend mine out quite a bit. You'll see as the process goes. I didn't want dark veining. I wanted like brown, gold speckles, if that makes sense. But I wanted like more white and beige veining. I can't really describe what I wanted. I just had a vision in mind and I knew that I just had to blend these dark veins out, and these were going to be like the background layers when I added the other layers on top. So it looks a little funky right now, but it does come together. And then the colors I'm using, all the paint I'm using is really inexpensive paint. So I got them either at Hobby Lobby, those little tubes that are like 50 cents or $1. I had just multiple different colors I was mixing together, creating my own colors. So I can't give you the exact colors I mixed or how I got these colors because I mixed them myself. But I will tell you, I had two separate colors of brown. I had like more of a saddle brown and then a dark, deep brown. I had black, white, and a beige. And basically what I did was I poured those on a plate and I would just mix them together as I went. So sometimes I wanted a little bit lighter of a gray. Beige. I would use that. And then if it went too light, I just went in with a little bit of brown, kind of sponge that on. And as I'm doing this, I'm also spraying the countertop with water. This is one of the reasons why it's important to use like a matte water-based paint. In my opinion, I think the matte colors blend much better, especially when you add water. But just know that when you're adding water to a countertop like this, it's definitely going to take some time to dry. It took 24 hours for this to dry before I could put a sealant over it. But I will say I was adding a lot of water. The reason I did that with the spray bottle was because I wanted these colors to blend so well together that it didn't look sponged on. I didn't want the sponged on look. I've had it before. I've done the DIY granite before, and although like from distance it looks good, it does look sponged on up close. I didn't want that look this time, so that's why I added a lot of water, a lot of blending. I even took my blow dryer at some point and kind of took that water that I added and just sprayed it down so that way there was no defined sponge mark. This was probably the funnest part of the project. My daughter jumped in to help. She's definitely getting into DIY projects and stuff, and it's really fun to include her in on these projects. She helps me with all the white veining that we added to the top. So this is one of the other layers that we did here. So she would just take the paintbrush and draw on random lines, and I would come in behind her, spray them down with water, and we would use our finger actually to kind of sponge it out. I found that using our finger for the white veinings was the best way to get just a smooth out vein versus going in with the sponge. It left those marks behind like I was mentioning earlier. I didn't want the sponged on look, so I was doing everything in my power to make this look like really smooth. It transitions from the different colors of paint.
I've been walking in the woods alone, try so hard to find my way back home. There's no reason to give in or let go.
As I was painting on these countertops, I kept trying to envision Lone Fox Kitchen. If you do not follow Drew or watch any of his videos, you are missing out. He is an incredible designer. I love his style. It's not really something I do in my home, but I like to watch his videos. I think that they're great. Very relatable too. I do, although obviously, you know, he's got a very expensive style. I feel like it's easy to replicate in a budget-friendly way. So that's what I'm trying to get at. So as I was painting on these countertops, I was trying to keep in mind how heavy a veining his countertops are. Oh my gosh, they're gorgeous. I don't think I could ever replicate them to a T, but the colors I used, the colors I chose were inspired by the Lone Fox kitchen. So that kind of, and if that gives you an idea of what I was going for, the inspiration I had, it came from Drew.
Walking in beside me too. It's creeping up under my skin. The fear of never seeing you ever again. It's creeping up under my skin. The fear of never seeing you ever again. Ever again. I've been thinking about the day it ends, when the sun will kiss my face again. You will stand out in the fields and call my name, and bring me home to see the day. Something's telling me to keep that flame, but something else saying there's no such thing. So what am I to do but hope for brighter days? They'll catch me when I end the chase. It's creeping up under my skin. The fear of never seeing you ever again. It's creeping up under my skin.
Now that the countertops are done, they're looking beautiful, but they're soaking wet. So it took 24 hours to dry, and then I'm going to go in using this Minwax polycrilic as my top coat. I'm using the clear semi-gloss finish, and the reason I chose this was because it has a sheen to it, but it's not too glossy. I didn't want anything that was going to be too shiny. I'm not a huge fan of a glossy surface, so that is why I chose this sheen. And I'm just applying this using a foam roller. However, it's not recommended to use a foam roller. The key is to go really slow so you don't get air bubbles, and I've kind of mastered this, so if you are using polyacrylic for the first time, I definitely recommend using a brush to apply it so you don't get those air bubbles. Now, something else I wanted to point out is that I'm using the polyacrylic because I've used epoxy. It did not work well for us. I don't like it. I don't like none of it. So I did not want to use the epoxy. And I have actually used polyacrylic before on my countertops, and they've held up wonderfully. I did a DIY granite countertop a long time ago when I lived in my mobile home. That held up really great. Actually, as a matter of fact, they still have those granite countertops. They're a little chipped and stuff now, but it's been almost 7 years since I did that. And then I actually did the polyacrylic on my countertops previously, the first time I ever did this countertop, and they held up great. So I know the polyacrylic works. It doesn't stain. It holds up well. It's not food safe or it's not scratch safe or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. And you obviously don't want to put heat on the polyacrylic. Everything comes with its pros and cons, that's for sure. So obviously, since it's the kitchen island and we do prepare food here, a couple things. First off, we never put food directly on our countertops anyway. So we always use like a cutting board. And then if we ever have like a hot pot, we just lay like a towel down or like a hot pad, and we've never had any issues. All right, y'all, I just finished my second coat of the clear semi-gloss polyacrylic, and it has just brought the colors to life. Like all the different colors. We got some rust brown, a little bit of green tone, which was not on purpose. That kind of was an accident, but it all like just blends so beautifully together. I think they're looking incredible. I need to do obviously some touch-ups now to the island. I made a little bit of a mess, but they needed to be repainted anyway. However, I'm loving the look. I think they look so good. So yeah, I'll keep you guys updated. I'll do another coat in just a few, and then we'll do like a good, little before and after clip.
So I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm actually considering painting the rest of the countertops this color. I just love this look so much more than like the speckled granite look. Are you scared, little? It's okay, baby. Come here. Come here. It's okay. It's thundering in a lightning. I'm freaking scared to death. She's so scared. It's bad outside, but anyway, I'm tempted to do them, but I'm not going to because Lord knows I cannot handle another project right now. So y'all better get in these comments and tell me absolutely no. With my son's birthday party this coming up weekend, summer's almost over. We've got to start school shopping. I just can't afford for my kitchen to be under construction at this moment. But don't put it past me. You never know. I might decide to do it tomorrow. It's okay, baby. Y'all see her shaking? The thunder and lightning scares the crap out of her. She just gets so nervous. It's okay. It's getting bad outside right now. You can see how dark it is. It's in the middle of the day too. It's like 2 o'clock. But it's about to pour. But anyway, I'm gonna let you guys go. I'll show you guys a before and after of how they turned out. Keep in mind, I do need to touch up the kitchen island. I just don't have any paint on hand right now. I have to go get a sample to touch it up. But in the meantime, the countertop looks better than it did, that's for sure.
All right, so it's time for the best part of the video, the before and after. So here's what the countertop looked like before, and this is now. What an upgrade. Look how stunning the colors are together. Oh, I'm just so in love with how these turned out. Way better than I expected for sure. You will have to let me know what you think in the comments below. Should I paint my other countertops? Y'all better tell me no, but also tell me yes at the same time. Anyway, thank you guys so much for hanging out, watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it gave you lots of inspiration to tackle a project on your own. And I hope to see you guys in my next video in just a couple days. Bye, y'all.
You're my music, but you tear me to pieces. So where does it come from? Scene that keeps playing on repeat, ignores the rule of thumb. Oh, where does it come from? Oh, where does it come from? All your emotions with your heart on your sleeve, it won't fade until you paint it black.